After being asked the question of my theatre experiences, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. After finishing college in 1970, I was undecided between theatre and the arts and which direction to go in. After a lot of careful consideration and research into both theatre and art, I decided to leave art and pursue a career in theatre. I attended Mount View Theatre School, which is just in North London, and I went there in 1974. So I was 20 when I attended the theatre school, and I was there for 2 years. The whole time I was there, I didn't have an interpreter or any communication support or anything, but I was really lucky because my tutor was really supportive and gave me one-to-one sessions. The first project I was involved in was the theatre, costume and set design for a play called The Crucible. It was really interesting. I had to pull all my ideas together, consider the technology I could use, and I learned lots of new information. What was really interesting was the play wasn't going to be staying just in the one theatre in London. It was going to be travelling around the whole UK. So whilst pulling together my design ideas and considering everything, I had to think about how it would be pulled down and put up and pulled down and put up easily, but still look really good. In the end, I ended up giving up the course. I stuck at it for 9 months, but I just wasn't happy and my confidence really dropped. It was to do with the lack of communication and the lack of support. The world of theatre was a really fast-paced industry, and being deaf it really did hold me back. I ended up going to work for the more costume design of it, linked to hearing theatre. It wasn't a waste of my time. I did learn some really valuable lessons, and the team I worked with were fantastic. However, I just had the issues of everything being so hearing orientated, and I ended up having to change things, and being deaf, it just really stuck up some barriers for me. So after sticking at the course for 9 months, I ended up giving up. I was just really unhappy and my confidence had really fell. There was just no communication and no access for deaf people. The theatre world was a really fast-paced industry, and with my hearing problems, I couldn't keep up. I ended up going and working for a company more focused on clothing and costume design. I didn't end up pursuing that in the end, but it wasn't a waste of my time. It was really valuable, and it led to me being involved in theatre again, but translating hearing theatre into a deaf-aware audience. The team I worked with were fantastic, but I ended up not carrying on with that either. But it was really interesting changing the theatre to match a deaf audience. So the job was fine. Having a hearing script and translating it into a deaf script was absolutely fine. You had to consider the culture, the language, because the hearing scripts just had no relevance to the deaf community. I had to match the audience. At the same time, I was working as an ambassador for the university. So there was deaf students joining the university, but a lot of them from mainstream education. So they'd had a hearing education. I'd talk about the BDA and they were like, what? They had no idea what the BDA was. At the time, it was the BDA 100 years party anniversary. It was 1990. And I felt I needed to educate them about it. They needed to be aware of the BDA and the role that they played. So I decided I had a great idea. I pulled together a whole play. I didn't even write the script in English. I wrote it in BSL. It was linked to the May 1990 and the oppression of the deaf, to do with education, how they decided it was going to be oral, deaf people had to sit on their hands. It was really good, and we managed to pull together an entire performance out of it. So the script was finished. I compiled them all together and sent them out among the deaf community. I needed to recruit actors to play each of my parts and start thinking about pulling the play together. I couldn't believe it at the amount of responses I had. The deaf community was so happy that there was finally a play for them that they could be involved in. I had loads of responses and I had to decide who I was going to have. We pulled together the parts, changed the words, changed the language and made it so that each actor was happy. I then had to think about the technology side, what was going to go behind the stage, the lighting, how I was going to put the stage together, the smoke, and make it really accessible for that deaf audience. The play was called The Last Flickering Light of Hope. So the story and the meaning buried within the story of The Last Flickering Light of Hope is really powerful and really strong. It's to do with the oppression of the deaf community and the younger communities going into mainstream education, so they feel hearing inside, they grow up with a hearing culture and a hearing education, and that shows the decline in the younger generations going to the deaf club. The deaf generation at the deaf clubs just gets older and older and older, and the play shows how this eventually dies out and the travelling of that through the death of it and to heaven. So it is a really powerful story. So within the play, they incorporate the really powerful images. So after the last man from the deaf club has died and gone into this space of heaven, there's three people that come to him. He's asking, do you sign, do you sign, do you sign? At which point everyone gets mad. They end up tying him up and leave him there. They leave him there on his own. And this is linked to the May 1990 decision for oral education. And they used to do that to people in schools. They used to tie them up and not allow them to use their hands, so they were unable to communicate. In the film, he's just left there. And this is a very powerful image and a very horrible and hurting image for the deaf community to see. So in the story, he's left there for a very long period of time. Then one person comes in, almost like a representative of BSL, comes onto the stage. The use of an interpreter, the deaf people can't see what's going on behind the stage, but they can see the releasing of the guy's hands, his hands becoming free. And this shows the change after the 1990 decision, when the use of interpreters and sign language was allowed back in schools. He's released and he's free and he's a lot happier and he's not oppressed anymore. Then there's this image of a tree with lights in it, and it's to remind the deaf people that they have the lights up there and they need to keep up there. They can keep their signing and keep it going. So that final image with the tree and the lights, that is why it's called the last flickering light of hope. Those lights up there are the last hope for the deaf community. But it's just showing that they will no longer be oppressed. Sign language is our language, and that's the language we will use. However, the meaning of May 1990 is important, and we must always remind people of that. But it was in the past, and show that we're never going back there, that sign language is going to carry on being used. So the whole experience of writing this play and presenting this play has been absolutely beautiful, and I've really, really enjoyed it. What I've learned is that from now on, the hearing community need to accept the deaf community and so include their culture within their plays so that it is understandable and recognisable to the deaf community. However, it's also my responsibility to teach the young deaf of today about the theatre and the culture and accepting who they are, because I am not the future of the deaf community, they are.